Good morning. Welcome to this first OpenCloudification webinar of 2023. My name is Ulrich Saldesacht. I'm the Managing Director of the association called ELSEC. And definitely also welcome to the new year. I hope you're all doing fine. We basically kicked off last year, as in 2022, with the new project called OpenCloudification. It's been an activity under the flagship program that's called Cook, which is basically the objective of a Flemish government to support the knowledge transfer of technologies into companies throughout Belgium and Flanders in the first place. But of course, we're welcoming also any other participants from all over the world. OpenCloudification is an activity where we are aiming to make sure that the knowledge about cloud computing, cloud technologies, open cloud technologies is being transferred into companies that are willing to experiment with it, are willing to start developing new use cases and potentially even business cases with it, and are looking to further expand and innovate on the basis of those concepts and technologies. So it's, if you like, a bit of a technology push-oriented perspective, whereby the use of cloud technologies is really central. But at the same time, of course, we're not blind for the needs of the industry, of the business. And that's really the reason why we try to engage the two worlds. One side being really the domain of new types of technologies, and the other side being the needs from the industry. So we have a specific set of industry target audiences in mind. One is specifically the domain of ICT companies, which are obviously a good group of companies whereby they are developing softwares, they're developing technologies, and it's coming quite natural, obviously, that there will be an interest towards the use of cloud, if they haven't done so already. Because, of course, most new companies that are starting up are immediately embracing concepts of the cloud, but therefore not immediately thinking about using open cloud technologies. Yes, they will do once they figure out that the invoices coming in from Amazon, Azure, or the likes of them might be pretty steep at an amazing speed. And so therefore it could very be useful also to consider alternatives. Also, in another context, what we've seen, especially over the last couple of years, is the use of IoT and IoT connectivity towards the cloud. And a number of public cloud providers basically trying to refrain from providing those services in a wide scale, and actually stopping some of the offerings that they have in that particular domain. And then as a third element, of course, there's the idea that many more companies would like to take control again over their cloud developments, cloud strategies, and cloud technologies, and therefore also looking to be much more sovereign in the domain of also using cloud technologies. So those are a couple of reasons, in any case, why we are, in this case, again, considering the reason for helping companies in the domain of technologies in getting better equipped with understanding what cloud technologies can offer, what open cloud in this case particularly can offer. In addition to all of this, of course, there's the target market of ICT companies, but we also have a very specific target towards any companies basically which are expanding into the world of digitalization. And then we have in that way a specific focus towards manufacturing companies, companies in the industrial world. So in today's webinar, we'll be talking about first steps in terms of the cloud world, and some business cases that will be elaborating also towards the domain of industry. We from ELSEC, we have a particular interest in addition to all of this on cybersecurity. So we'll be focusing also using some of the concepts towards the cybersecurity industry, towards utilizing cybersecurity technologies, also within the cloud context, and making sure that cloud developments are also being secured. We call ourselves the Digital Security Catalyst. This is just a picture from our new website, which is being launched this week. So it's a bit of a premium here, and where we are really making sure that we can focus on our activities as a catalyst, making sure that we can bring the expertise from the research together with the developments from the industry, the cybersecurity industry and technology industry, and bring them to end users, being both technology users, as well as in this case, the technology developers. We have also a number of subsidizing platforms, if you like, and that's specifically of interest to companies based in Flanders. With DigiHub, we focus on SMEs in Flanders, SMEs which are ready to digitize. And so therefore, again, the open cloud technologies, cybersecurity technologies, but also the wider concept of digitalization is relevant, because we can help you not only with these types of webinars, but actually also with advisory, with technologies. We can actually give you a set of technologies, come install them, and showcase how this could actually work in your environment. Or we could help you in finding the right additional partners in further developing whatever business case or concept case we came up to together with in the DigiHub platform. DigiHub is sponsored by the Flemish government. It's being supported also with a number of these companies that you can see here. And thanks to VOCA, we'll be able to offer you those. So simply reach out to us and we'll be able to guide you there. For the manufacturing companies in this participating here or listening in, we have another specific platform which is called Digitalis, and that's a European digital innovation hub that we're partnering up with a number of companies and organizations here on the screen, and whereby we are using open cloud technologies, open cloud concepts to help to digitize the manufacturing industry. And I'll be showcasing some ideas about this. So you can easily think of using sensors into a manufacturing environment that collect data and that send that into a cloud environment. So you can manipulate it yourself, but you can also ask some of your partners, vendors, suppliers to look into some of the data and help you out, for instance, on condition-based maintenance as an example use case. OpenCloudification, it's a project that we are going to run together with some partners, the Beacon and ID Lab by IMEC, to give you some insights into the new developments of open cloud, cloud native, but also looking not only into cloud native, also other open technologies that could help you in developing your business and basically doing this digital transformation using cloud. We have some other technologies that we are looking into, like the use of AI, and then in this case specifically for cybersecurity. And then for the cybersecurity people out there, we have a specific program whereby we are utilizing AI capabilities and technologies and concepts and deploying those into cloud environments in order to help companies in cybersecurity to easily get access to AI, but also to resources which are needed to basically provide AI results. So machine learning, AutoML, but equally so behavioral analytics, textual analytics, and even imaging, different types of use cases that we can showcase. And then we are looking towards how to protect cloud environments, for instance, using what we then call computing and encrypted data, so privacy data, data from industrial sensors, which we can immediately transform into unreadable data, if you like, but making sure, of course, that the data can still be handled by those entities and persons that need to get access to them. So that's what we call, in this case, computing on encrypted data. It's data in transit. It's actually transactional data that we can, in this case, also encrypt in order for many different entities to work upon. And then we have other mechanisms and programs where we are equally using cloud technologies by ourselves in order to facilitate access from multiple partners and also to be able to scale it much more easily towards the rest of the world. So some basic concepts that we are utilizing cloud for by ourselves as some first insights and first use cases. But this is giving you a bit of an example on how we are treating this. I mean, we are planning to do webinars on a monthly basis in OpenCloudification. We're also organizing workshops where we will be giving you hands-on access to some cloud technologies and helping you out with your particular cases in the context of a classroom and supporting you thereon. We are working on a number of white papers and also some platforms basically that allow you to do this type of cloudification environment and test out, also do some testing before you actually deploy into these clouds environments. So final concept, and also for our partners in the cybersecurity space and in the security domain. If you are looking for expansion into this world and you are looking for innovation, then you might also consider participating in the open call that we have currently running until the 14th of March at 5 p.m. We welcome you and some joint SME cybersecurity innovator or security innovator to work on providing us with an idea. And in this case, the Secure IT platform is specifically meant for this. Now, having said all of this, we welcome today, in the first place, my colleague and my dearest partner in crime on OpenCloudification, Luca, who will be sharing some thoughts and ideas about how to take the first steps into cloudification. And Luca, good morning. How are you?
Hello, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah, I hope so.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Thanks for joining in, and thanks for taking this this first step as well. We are taking this this first webinar as a sort of a showcase on what people can start thinking of when considering cloud and when going into cloud. So it's really about first steps into cloudification. You'll be guiding us throughout some of the very basic concepts of what cloud has to offer today, and also towards the future, obviously, and also showcasing some of the baseline technologies that are there for. So why don't you take us along in the next hour or so, and we welcome definitely from the participants any questions, comments, or ideas on this first webinar. And then later on, I'll be coming back with some potential next steps and ideas for digitalization, specifically in industrial domains or in the cybersecurity space. Luca, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ulrich. Let me share my presentation. That should be this one. Can you see the full screen?
I can, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Nice. So yes, welcome again, everyone. My name is Luca Gattubiggio, and I'm part of EdSec as an innovation manager and as a project manager for this specific project. So today we're going to look on some first steps, business cases and use cases about cloud technologies and open cloud mostly. The idea, as Ulrich already said, is to give you some insights, to have a broad idea on what cloud can bring to your company or to your interest in general. So the first topic will be indeed the question, why would I need to consider cloud and open cloud technologies if I am a technology company or a manufacturing company? Then we will look for some use cases that other companies that already did this step presented. And my last presentation would be about basic business cases that hopefully will give you an idea on what are the advantages of using the cloud. So let's start with the first topic, moving to the cloud. What I'm showing here is a survey that has been done by IDG Communications in 2020. And the question, as you can see, was which best describes your organizations as IT environment in general. So considering infrastructure, applications, data analytics, I guess, databases, storage, and so on. And as you could see, the survey was done for more than 500 IT professionals working in IT companies. The question was divided from what they already have today and what they were planning to have in the upcoming 1 year and a half. And the use of cloud is basically already the majority of the percentage here, at least partially cloud and mostly on premises. But you can see how everyone is agreeing on shifting more and more towards the cloud. And these numbers are especially more clear when you look at the gray and the light blue part. So moving most of your component, most of your IT environment in the cloud. This is from 2020, then of course, COVID changed a bit things, but even looking at the most recent surveys that was more or less asking the same question, you can see how having everything on premises is becoming smaller and smaller. Same for keep mostly of your environment in your on premises and just partially on the cloud. So this is the idea, let's say. Then as a general environment, your IT environment. For some specific sectors, this is even more clear. In this case, McKinsey and company did this survey specifically on discrete manufacturing industries. And in this case, they asked if they were adopting cloud within AI, in the sector of AI. And then you can see that basically all the industries interviewed were already using the cloud, or at least developing a cloud strategy for that. Other important question or interesting questions that we have again from McKinsey, but also from Flexera, in this case is 2022, the State of the Cloud report, show what are the main decision criteria that has been selected by these industry/professionals. So if you see on the right side, basically the main goal was to have operational efficiency. That's the first option for most of them, followed by having good quality of services and reliability, as well as security and risk reduction. And if you look on the left side, where we can look at some of the main initiatives that all the organizations were planning to have, or the reasoning why they wanted to move towards the cloud. Again, the first choice is optimizing the use that they already were doing for the cloud, so saving money, basically. But they wanted to also migrate more workloads to the cloud. They wanted to move from on-premises software to software as a service models. And so on, all the list goes on with a lot of interesting insights. But what I found interesting is that if you take, again, the IDG survey, here they asked also what were the biggest challenges that they faced while moving to the cloud or adopting the cloud. And you can see that the first option, the first choice is controlling the cloud costs, which is a bit a contradiction because like the main goal is to have operational efficiency. Your main goal is to have cost savings. And then your first problem of adopting the cloud is that you're spending more than expected. The reasoning behind this is basically that a lot of companies do not realize how difficult, how complicated it is move towards the cloud. They're a bit overconfident. There's a lot of enthusiasm, which is positive, but that also means that if you're not entirely sure of what you're doing, then probably you're gonna face a lot of challenges. This is not only related to controlling your cloud costs, but as you can see, the list is quite long. And it's the main places are covered by data privacy security challenges, keep all your resources secure and protected, anything related to governance and compliance of your data and policies. There's a lack of skills and expertise when it comes to the cloud and cloud security. There's a big challenge on integrating the resources in the cloud with what you already have on your on-premises systems, and a general lack of management, of skill expertise, data migrations. The list is quite long. This is the reason behind OpenCloudification, because basically the list that I just read can be covered by a project like OpenCloudification, in which we are trying to guide you or to provide some best practices and some expertise and knowledge to avoid the common challenges that someone who would like to move towards the cloud might face. This is our website. Basically is a new website that is being updated constantly. The project is quite new, so we're trying to add content and provide new information constantly. I really recommend you to keep an eye on it, because it's gonna grow day by day, and hopefully you would find everything that you need there. Now, we talked about cloud in general, but indeed we're also talking about open cloud, because one of our main focuses is on open source technologies. So coming back to the same survey, you can see that open source software, free open source software, is slightly increasing, or at least it's expected to increase, and it's true. That's why we also bet a lot on the fact that open source technologies might be extremely relevant regarding the cloud, but that doesn't mean that we're excluding completely the licensed or the paid software, because as you can clearly see, it's still the majority, or at least 50% of the software applications in general that you usually find in a cloud environment. So with the project, we will focus definitely on open source, but we'll still keep an eye, and we are perfectly aware that paid applications, licensed software are there. Some advantages on using open source in the cloud, because there are a lot of advantages. The main ones: cost efficiency, which is again one of the main reasons for all the company looking towards the cloud. Well, basically, if you're going with open source tools and technologies, they're open licenses, meaning that you don't have to pay any fees for that, and that can reduce the costs on your cloud environments. They're quite flexible and customizable, because in the end, having access to the code means that you can adapt it to your specific needs, to your specific requirements. Of course, you need the knowledge and the expertise to do that. You need developers or engineers to do that, but theoretically, it's possible to adapt the open source to your needs. And that's a big advantage that usually you cannot have in their counterpart. There are large and active communities, especially for a highly adopted open source tool. In that case, they're usually also well documented, and you can find communities that keep them updated, find new bugs, new security vulnerabilities, and push the developers or the contributors to fix them as soon as possible. So that's also a good advantage. And in the same way, you can share your ideas and get ideas and innovations coming from the group, the communities behind, which can lead then to new features, new development, and in general, open source technologies are highly compatible with a wide range of tools and services, because they are made to be integrated with other tools. There are some cons, of course. There are some disadvantages on doing that. Main one, that if you're not using a big, highly adopted open source technologies, then maybe there might be a lack in support or documentation. Sometimes they're not that user friendly because maybe they're developed by experts or developers that they don't take into account the fact that some users might not perfectly know how the software works or what might be the main issues that some companies might face. And the third point is the security. The fact that the code is freely available means that also attackers can have it and find vulnerabilities in that and then exploit them. So making your code a bit more vulnerable, but that's, as I already said, also an advantage, because if you have your own code and someone finds vulnerabilities, probably no one's going to tell you. While if the code is open, not necessarily malicious actors find it, and maybe you will be the chance to fix it before getting attacked. Talking about open source technologies, of course, during these projects, we're gonna rely a lot on the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, because it's some sort of big reference point while talking about technologies related to the cloud. It's a non-profit organization, and the idea indeed is to promote and support the development of cloud native technologies. And it basically recognized that one of the bigger open source project that manages and maintains open source projects like Kubernetes, which is probably the most famous one, but also Prometheus, Envoy, and hundreds of them. The idea is to create this global ecosystem that then can be used as a reference point, as I said, but they also offer like not only resources, but also trainings, events, and certifications. So when you mention the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, you probably also mentioned their landscape, which is this huge image, and each small square is an open source technology or a technology intended to be used in the cloud. It's divided on categories and then subcategories, like you can see the database on the top left corner, but and then messaging, application. The list is quite long. As you can see, there are a lot of components there. And it's difficult to navigate from a certain point of view. That's also the reason why we're referencing to it, because open source technologies are perfect for the cloud. But if you just are a newcomer and you see this, you probably don't even have the idea of where to look or where to look at. So yeah, open source technologies are perfect for the cloud, but there are so many that it might be easily overwhelming for users that are new to this ecosystem. And since there are so many domains, from container orchestration to networking, databases, CI/CD pipelines, and so on, it's also challenging to understand the relationship between these projects and how they can match and fit together. As well, it's complicated to keep track of all of them and see, because sometimes they might be complex, they can change over time. New projects can come up. Old projects might be updated and slightly change their purposes and so on. That's why that's another good reason for OpenCloudification to be here and try to guide you inside these challenges and try to fix them in a way that we can provide best practices, guide you on tools that might be used, which one might be the best that suit your use case, and so on. Okay, talking again about cloud and open cloud in general. If you're new, some competencies that we strongly recommend you to have, as in at least some knowledge about cloud architecture. So how the cloud services are architectured, how they are different from on-premises infrastructure, how you design them, how you migrate to them, networking, as in general concept on how the networking is handled, and especially for secure connection in the cloud. Best practices related to security, such as the encryption part, which is related to networking sometimes. The access control, but also comply with standards, data protection, and so on. What means virtualization, because you're gonna probably use either virtual machines or containers. How to manage the cloud, how to automate. These are further steps that you're gonna need quite soon. Develop application on the cloud, because it's a bit different from developing in your own on-premises systems. And in general, the concept of containerization, for example, or cloud native deployment, and so on. The compliance, because depending on your field, you might have specific requirements, and it is important that you remain compliant even within the cloud. Manage your data, that's another important step. Like data as data warehousing, as storing the data, manage the data, do some analytics with the data, but also backups and recovery. And cost optimization, because it's again easy to go over your cloud budget if you are not perfectly aware on how the cloud works and how you can optimize some costs there. Yeah, it's a lot of concepts, a lot of competencies needed just to move to the cloud. But this is not a solo journey. Like, it's not everything for a single individual usually, but it's most likely that you will have a team or more than one responsible for both migrate to the cloud or interact, let's say, with the cloud, and then maintain the new ecosystem that you're gonna create. So again, we strongly recommend to have this knowledge, and of course, our project, our OpenCloudification will try to help you as much as possible. Okay, that leads to the second topic of the day for me. That would be some use cases related to technology and manufacturing industries or companies. Again, this is the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. The reason why I'm showing it again is because, as I said, it's a pretty relevant point of reference, but also because focusing on open source tools, we usually refer to what they call graduated projects within the CNCF landscape, which are the projects that are considered ready for production environment systems. Basically, the landscape divides this project based on their level of maturity And this is the highest level, let's say, the one that is ready for production environment, that has enough features and it can be used, basically. That doesn't mean that you cannot use other projects. There are the lower as sandboxes, for example, project can still be used, but they're not guaranteed. They're considered not production ready, at least. It's still worth to keep an eye on them, because the next step, or the final step, is still to become a graduated project and then become a highly adopted solution. So about using open source in the cloud, I'm going to bring you some examples for tech companies first. If someone was already attending the kickoff event, might recognize some of them, because those are open source solutions adopted by big tech company that then they tend to, or they like to explain how they did it. So I found them pretty interesting to report here. And what I found is that you might have at least these 4 situations when you decide as a big company or as a tech company to introduce open source in your pre-existing system. The one reason is improve your environment, and that's the example of using Prometheus that I'm gonna show you soon. In this case, Prometheus, it's, I think, the main monitoring and alerting system used worldwide. Is designed for both Kubernetes clusters and cloud-native applications. What it provides is a set of features to collect data, store data, but also query data, metrics data, and then it can generate alerts and notifications in a way that when something happens, based on the data, you can quickly react on that. And the example is comes from Cloudflare. I guess everyone knows Cloudflare. And in their case, the goal was to improve what they already had in place as monitoring capabilities. They were using their own analytics dashboard, but they realized that they weren't getting enough data, let's say, from their systems. So they decided to introduce Prometheus together with other open source tools, as you can see from the image. Thanos is there, Grafana, which is very often used together with Prometheus. And then they realized all the advantages that they get from adopting Prometheus. First of all, they improved their monitoring capabilities, meaning that now they had access to a bigger and wider range of data, and they could better monitor the health and the performance of their systems. And that also helped to have a better understanding of their own system, because the more data you get, the better you understand how your system works, where the problems might be, where something goes wrong, where something might be improved, and so on. So it was useful also on making future decisions to optimize performances, for example. They could get useful alerts. That also improves the speed on responding on incidents and to be more effective on that. And have efficient day 2 operations, because at that point, the DevOps engineers, for example, could quickly identify and resolve the issues, reduce the downtime, improve the performances of the systems in general. Another good point is when you need to simplify things on your cloud environment. And in this case, Helm is a package manager that works with Kubernetes. It is for Kubernetes, sorry. The idea is to use some sort of packaging format that are called charts, which are a collection of files, basically, in which you describe the configurations and all the dependencies that you would like to have in your application. And then you use these charts from Helm to deploy these applications and configurations on Kubernetes. The examples comes from Ticketmaster. This is a screenshot that I took from one of their presentations that it was a few years ago from a CNCF event. Basically, in their case, they needed to manage 15 Kubernetes clusters that were deployed in multiple regions and multiple environments. So it was complicated to handle all of them, to manage all of them. So they decided to introduce Helm, and they realized how easier it became to manage and deploy these applications using Helm, indeed. It also provided extra additional features like an easy way to upgrade and roll back the applications that you had in the cluster. And it was easier to then manage the life cycle of your application and ensure that everything was running with the updated version. So this is a second example. Another good point is that introducing some open source technologies might support your growth as a company, as your application, as your environment. Envoy, in this case, is again, one of the main choices, if not the main open source choice regarding L4, L7 proxies. It's usually used as a part of a service mesh architecture, but it works as a proxy and it provides by itself function as traffic manager, API gateway, and load balancing, for example, and a lot of additional features. And it's generally used within Kubernetes, but it's perfectly applicable to any cloud native application. And Reddit provided in their blog post a nice example of the challenges that they were facing while their systems were growing, and they needed to partially readapt their infrastructure to consider this growth. It was quite steep. And to do that, they decided to adopt Envoy to address all the communication between these systems. And the problem was that, of course, they had to integrate an open source technology in something that it's already in place, but it's also something that you cannot shut down completely. So the integration has to be carefully handled without disrupting the system that's already in place. So they needed to develop some custom integrations. They needed to, because they needed specific support for specific systems and so on. So it's a very interesting read in this case. Then how you can basically adapt that adapt one of these open source tools to your needs. That's one of the points that I was giving a few slides ago. And to conclude this section, open source technologies might be used to solve some problems that you still don't have, but you know that they are gonna come soon. And in this case, Vites is an open source technology that is basically used to horizontally scale databases or database clusters. Horizontally scaling means, I don't know if the concept is clear. In any case, to briefly explain it, you have an instance of something, in this case, a database, and you have input output coming from it. If the database, the instance itself cannot handle it, then the system can create some sort of new instance with the same purpose in a way that you can split the traffic, the incoming and outgoing traffic between the two. Of course, in that case, you need some sort of orchestration and management for that. But that helps managing the traffic without disrupting the service. And then if it's still not enough, you can scale up again, put a third instance, for example, and then when the traffic lowers, you can just remove one of the instances. And in this case, the example comes from YouTube, because in 2010, they had this big issue of too many people watching funny cat compilations on YouTube. And basically, it was exceeding the database's capacity. So they went through a whole process of reasoning and thinking on how they could fix the problem. They tried some temporary solutions to do that, but in the end, they realized that since there wasn't any good solution for that, they decided to create their own tool. And once they realized that it was a very powerful tool, very useful, they decided to make it open source and donate it to the community. Of course, there are other graduated projects that are interesting. These are just few of them. There are multiple, and not only graduated projects, but just to give you an idea on the different types of domains. We have something for login layer, we have something for policies, cloud native registry, distributed tracing, software updates, storage orchestration for Kubernetes. The list is quite long. Now, I mostly focus on tech companies because, yeah, I mentioned basically tech companies, but as the title says, we're not only focusing on tech companies, but also manufacturing, which doesn't mean that you cannot apply those use cases to them, but it's likely that there might be some more specific use cases that might be more interesting. In this case, predictive maintenance, quality control, and training and simulation are good examples, because if you're producing something that can be considered IoT, for example, well, you want to monitor that and analyze the data coming from that equipment in a way that maybe you can easily predict when something is likely to fail, and you can prevent that downtime, for example, when it comes to maintenance and to production efficiency. And in the same way, you can have a better look and a better track on your control system, and maybe you can automate something and put something in place that improves your testing processes or the quality of your products in general, and put some, why not, virtual or augmented reality to train employees, or use technologies that might simulate processes, as we're going to see soon, and then do experimentation on that. And in this case, that's something quite recent because it has been announced a few months ago, basically. The Mars Inc., the global food and confectionery products, the global leader on that field, is working with Accenture to create what they called a factory of the future. And the idea is to, in the upcoming years, to have something that will use AI, cloud, edge, and digital twins. The digital twins, just to give, again, a brief explanation, is a virtual replica of any physical asset that you might have. in which you put trying to replicate it as better, as good as possible. And in that, you will put all the statistical models, all the physics models, all the history, all the data that you have from your real assets. And then what you can do is experiment on them instead of do experiments that are way more costly and more time consuming. And they brings a lot of extra challenges. And since the company was already testing it from 3 years now, they decided to create this cloud and move their digital twins there in a way that all the different branches could access it and to gather data and improve what they call their manufacturing operations to make them more efficient, and also related to sustainability goals like waste reduction or greenhouse gas emissions and so on. So this is something that is basically happening in the upcoming years, and we will see probably some results soon. And to add something to the list that I already showed, other good use cases might be your life cycle management of your products, to manage them through the entire life cycle product of your product, from the design and development to the production and retirement of the product, but also to improve customers' experience, because yeah, why not? If you're selling to customers and you're providing a nice environment, like use the cloud for a set of services that are easily accessible to the customers, then probably this is an added value to your products. And a good example is Volkswagen that now launched. This comes from 2020, so I'm quite sure that it's a bit more updated than this image, in which they presented what they called the Volkswagen Automotive Cloud. Basically, the idea was that all their cars considered as, well, devices that can be connected to the cloud, and they provide data to the cloud. So some sort of IoT devices, but very big IoT devices, could being used to provide a lot of data that could be retrieved from the customers, for instance, from anywhere, from their phones, from their mobiles, from their laptop, and so on. So they could have information about the vehicle, the gas consumption, position of your car, and so on. But also useful for Volkswagen as well, because they could keep track of their vehicles for the whole time and see and get their data, and then probably improve services and see where they could put some improvement in the efficiency and so on. Other good use cases might be related to the supply chain management, which is, if we're talking about actual physical components, then it relates only to manufacturing. But if we talk about digital products, then it can be applied to tech companies as well. Indeed, at the beginning, the project IoT SBOM has been mentioned, for example, that also considers the supply chain management improvement, but that's another project. In any case, the management might be used to optimize your inventories, logistics, production processes, and so on. And it's easier than to have direct access to it if it's if it is moved to the cloud, because then it's easily accessible from anywhere. Remote monitoring, if you have systems or products that are in a remote place or physically located in another location, then you can have instant access to it from anywhere again. But also the collaboration, because if you have employees or also suppliers or partners that are not in the same place as you are, but then collaboration and decision-making might be improved if everyone can connect to the same cloud. But we're going to discuss, because some of these use cases basically can be considered as good starting business cases as well. So we're going to talk a bit more about what are the advantages or disadvantages brought by them in the next slides. Okay, this ends the second presentation, so maybe it's a good moment to have a break, and if there are questions or comments about that, I can wait a couple of minutes and see if anyone has questions for that. Otherwise, I will continue. Okay. Then I guess I'm gonna go further. The next presentation will be about, as I said, basic business cases for technology and manufacturing companies. Again, this is the idea here is to provide some insights, help you thinking about what the cloud can provide to you, but also what might be the challenges that you can face and what might be the first steps that you should take if you're really considering but still not use the cloud, as well as I'm already on the cloud, but I would like to be 100% sure that all my processes, all my systems are following the best practices, are following the well-architected frameworks, for example, when relating to cloud. So it's really open to anyone. Okay, so let's start this section. I picked again a graph from the Discrete Manufacturing Industry Survey from McKinsey in 2020, because here the question was about what they consider as cloud maturity level from both the IT and business perspective. And as you can see, 60 to 70% consider themselves as industries above average, which is a bit too much, which is not necessarily bad, but then you see how 40% of them realize that they overrun the cloud budget. So it's almost 1 out of 2 that, even being so confident on their cloud knowledge, that they didn't realize that they went over this budget. And even more likely, like 50% of them realized that the cloudification, or in our case would be OpenCloudification path, is more complex than what they anticipated. And then 74, sorry, but it's still 3 out of 4, failed to get the full value, in this case, business values from the cloud. So what they expected to gain, 3 out of 4 didn't manage successfully to do it. Again, this links perfectly on what we discussed at the beginning. The main point here is not that the cloud then is a bad thing, but you need to know what you're doing since the beginning. That's the main point. Some tips that we can already provide, then of course really depends on your use case, on your business case. But you should clearly define your goals from the beginning. So if you have business values, as plural, that you would like to achieve from the cloud, they should be identified and defined immediately. Then they can be adapted, of course, they can change a bit, but you need to be aware during the whole process, because otherwise you risk to, the risk is to overrun your budget quite easily. Moving to the cloud might be complicated, as half of the surveyed industries said. So you need to be also aware of the fact that you will need new skills, new knowledge to acquire during the process as a starter, but then afterwards for the whole process, for the whole maintenance of the cloud, for the whole life cycle, you constantly need to being updated on what are the new technologies, new security issues. It's a never-ending process of learning new skills and knowledge. That also means that it's good to have a nice plan while you're trying to implement the technologies and the changes that you will need to make to adapt your infrastructure to the cloud as a full migration, because I would like also to specify the fact that we're not necessarily talking of moving completely to the cloud. It's not that now I have my system on premises and then suddenly I want everything moved to the cloud. It might be one of your goals, but it might also be that you would like to move partially parts of it on the cloud, which is perfectly fair. And in any case, you have to be to plan it properly. So you have to know what are the changes that you need to make, what are the ways to implement, if they're working, what are the technologies required, and so on. And of course, this is something that I didn't put in the slides, but was reported on the report of the survey. Most of the companies consider the cloud migration or the cloudification as something IT related only, while it's very likely then also your business domain will need to adapt accordingly. So take into account that IT and business domains should both adapt. Okay, some very basic business cases, starting from what is called anything as a service or X as a service, which is some sort of wrapping the most common infrastructure as service, platform as service, software as service, and so on, because there are so many that they define all of them as anything as a service, which basically is the process of renting your infrastructure that might be computing, networking, storing resources, a mix of them, anything, or the platforms to develop your software, or directly the software, without the need to invest and maintain them in your physical infrastructure. And then you can deliver those solutions or software to the customers. So indeed, software development might be a specific business case. And then you need your platform to develop, test, deploy your software, and then provide it to the customers. And again, as you can see, for all the entries, you do not need to invest in your own infrastructure because you're using the cloud. Same for data management when it comes to storing data or manage all the services that store and manage the data for you. If you're moving to the cloud, and here most of the time I'm with saying moving to the cloud as public cloud provider, because in that case it's an external one, but it as well being a private cloud that you have in a separate system or in a separate infrastructure. It doesn't, or a private cloud managed by someone else for you as a third party cloud, that's also applicable here. But again, the end of all these entries is that you don't have to invest in your own infrastructure. Backup and disaster recovery to protect your data basically and ensure that if any disaster happens, then you can recover it and retrieve it. But also the use of new technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning here are specified because, as again, I showed at the beginning, this is a hot topic that usually is used together with the cloud because very likely you will need a lot of resources or services that are easier to get from the cloud, especially if your company is not specialized in machine learning, for example. The same applies for web or any mobile application hosting, in which you have to host and deliver applications to your customers. What are the advantages of that? Well, the immediate one, and it's as we have seen already, the cost effectiveness of eliminating the investment in expensive hardware and software. This is a good graph that shows the costs on the left side with and without cloud services. Because of course, if I can rent my hardware from the cloud, the model usually is a pay as you go or pay as you use, meaning that I'm paying only for the hardware that I'm actually using it. While if I need something on my on premises, then probably I'm investing on a server, no matter if I'm using it or not, for example. And another good point is that comes on adopting the cloud is improving the scalability, because then services can scale up or down as needed and can adapt based on the changing of the business needs. The right graph, it's just random examples on showing a peak that gives you an example that I think is like one of the most used, most presented as explanation for scalability. So imagine that your services, you have an e-commerce platform and you sell products online, and you know that there are, and you have it on your own servers. You know that there are some periods during the year, like Christmas or Black Friday or any other holidays and stuff, that probably you will receive a peak during the year of requests and people trying to access your website to buy stuff as a gift, as a present. And so if you know that, probably you're gonna need some extra hardware to do that, because your server is not enough for handling that peak. So you probably add additional hardware to cope with that. But then what you have is that after putting it in place, you will handle the peak, but then you have hardware that you're not going to use anymore for the rest of the year or until the next peak. So what you can do is shutting it down, because probably it consumes energy and resources, and now it's not a good way to go. And then for the next year, you probably will need someone who puts them up again, the new server, and update it and connect it again. So it's not the best way to proceed. Let's put it this way. While if you will be on the cloud, then this process is automatic. So when a peak is encountered, the applications, the virtual machines, the container, anything that you're using can be scaled up or horizontally as I presented earlier. And then once the peak is over, you can put them down, and you will only pay for the resources that are being added for the peak. So there's a huge difference there. Of course, as we have seen, cloud costs might be higher than your infrastructure if you invest on it. If you're not aware on optimizing it properly or using it as you should. So again, it's easy to overrun these costs if they're not properly managed. Some other advantages that comes from it. Well, adopting the cloud, that usually speeds up the development and improves collaboration, because again, you have access from everywhere to specific services. You might have developers that works together and write code, or can, if something happens on the maintenance on your services and so on, can easily access from anywhere. You have an improved security in general if you know how to put them in place, but as a general rule, cloud solutions have multiple security measures in place that are used to both keep your customer data protected, as well as ensure the compliance with all the regulations that you might need. Of course, that's something that you should check with the cloud provider, especially if you're on a specific sector. But the main ones, let's say, usually cloud solutions provide them. And then another good advantage is improving the ability of retrieve data and recover it from disasters, because cloud infrastructures are generally split into multiple, what are called first regions and then availability zones, that are separated data centers. This is definitely true for public clouds, in which, yeah, you actually also have data centers spread all over the world, which brings an extra advantage of have global reachability. For example, if your customers are spread all over the world, well, then you can deploy your application closer to them, which provides a better user experience, for example, and less delay when someone needs to connect to your application. But the same can be applied on private clouds, for example. So you can deploy it, separating it either physically or virtually, your regions or availability zones, in a way that if something happens and affect just one availability zone, your data is probably also replicated somewhere else, so you can still retrieve it in the same availability zone, or worst case, from another region. Okay, other advantages. Well, the flexibility, because then cloud providers tend to offer a very wide range of services. So you can always select the best option that you might need. usually there are at least multiple options based on your knowledge, your needs, your experience with some specific tools. And for the examples of accessing new technologies, well, there might be some companies that they don't have access to specific technologies, like as we were saying about artificial intelligence, but they can still access and use services that maybe are present there already, and you can just consume them and get the same advantages as someone who knows more than you about artificial intelligence, for example. So even if you wouldn't be able to afford them as a private entity, you can get it from the cloud. From manufacturing companies, again, this is the list that I already presented. So it's a lot of points, but are the same that we discussed earlier. The predictive maintenance and quality control. Again, if you have products and anything that you would like to check, for example, during the entire life cycle management, or from remote, in the case it's located in a different physical location or at your customers, for examples. The supply chain management as optimizing the inventories, keep track of all the details of your products, the logistics, production processes, and so on. But also include collaboration between employees, but with partners and suppliers as well. Training for employees, again, if you use virtual reality, augmented reality, those are just examples, of course, or simulation of processes, as we have seen for the digital twins, for example, and so on. There are advantages, of course. The main one, as I already mentioned, is predict. This is a perfect use case, for example, of including artificial intelligence in your cloud, because in your systems, that can help you predicting when a specific equipment is likely to fail. So you can prevent downtime, but also have a more efficient maintenance of your production system, which also leads to an improvement of the quality of your products. It reduces the risk of defects because you can have a look on only at the products that are above a certain percentage of risk, for example. And as a consequence, then you will improve your efficiency of your operations in general and reduce the downtime. From the supply chain, instead, you improve visibility, not only for yourself, but also for your customers. For example, you can provide to them access to any type of list of description of what is included within your product, or that you want them to have quickly access to. Same way comes from collaboration and cost reduction, when you can have input coming from suppliers, partners, employees that are not physically there. And for the same reason, it speeds up your decision-making process and improve your collaboration in general. Other extra consideration that you should take into account, well, the security part. This is some extra consideration that comes together with what you should know about the cloud, basically. Those are, again, basic concept altogether, to give you an overview of what you should also consider while moving to the cloud. So the security, of course, is one of the main points here, as one of the main core of the project as well. You shouldn't being ensured that your data and your applications are secured, both when you're using the services, like the cloud provider might already offer security measures in place, like encryption, the access control, compliance, and so on. But it's also up to you, because either you using a public cloud provider or a private cloud, you have to ensure that the data from the applications that you're deploying, for example, has to be secured and stored in a correct way, and it has to be there should be secure communications between systems and applications and so on. The compliance is then another good point, which is related mostly on the specific compliance requirements that you might have on specific sectors. Like here I'm listing some, like healthcare, the e-commerce systems, financial services, and so on. So you should make sure that the provider that you choose, if you're going for a public cloud, or if it's something that you're building in your own premises, like a private cloud, then you should meet these requirements for your system. Privacy and data sovereignty, of course. You should always know how your data is used, how it's stored, where it's stored, when and how it is shared using the services. And for that, again, comply with all the privacy laws and regulations here in Europe. The GDPR, of course, is the main one, but it really depends on your use case and your, in this case, geographical position. The costs, of course, that's not an extra consideration. It's probably a main one. It's cost effective, the cloud, as long as you are aware on how you're using it and you are doing it properly and efficiently. So try to understand the pricing models that are listed and showed, usually the costs that come from the different services. Try to evaluate and do some comparisons between the on-premises cost that you might have already, if you're trying to evaluate to move to the cloud or not, and see if it's indeed convenient, not with the immediate step, because yeah, as we have seen, moving from the cloud, from the on-premises to cloud means that you don't have to invest in hardware, but then you will have likely to pay a subscription and pay for the services that you're using. So it's better to consider the total cost of ownership for the entire use of the cloud, not only the immediate benefits that come from it. Access and control, that's something strongly related to security. So be aware of how your data is accessed and your applications are accessed. See how much control you have, what are all the APIs and SDKs and all the tools that can be used for integration and automation of your workflows. And consider also, that's a very important point that we will probably stress a bit more in a specific webinar, the vendor lock-in problem, and if possible, keep in mind an exit strategy. So the vendor lock-in is a problem while you're locked with a specific public cloud provider that offers specific services, or that your system or your applications are strictly dependent on the services that are available from a cloud provider, and you cannot opt out that easily anymore, because at this point your entire processes are there, all your data is stored there. I don't know, and there are specific services that are not offered anywhere else. So they're really, the issue there might be that if they, for a certain point, in a certain point, decide to increase prices, you'll probably have no other choice to accept it. Or, for example, if they're shutting down a specific service that you were relying on, then you might have difficulties in that sense. So it's also important to take into account the potential vendor lock-in. This is sometimes mitigated with hybrid or multi-cloud strategies, but as I said, we're gonna probably talk about it in a specific webinar. And have, if it's possible, an exit strategy in mind in case you will have to transition back to your on-premises or to another cloud provider for anything that might happen with the current one. And once again, the OpenCloudification website is there trying to help you with all these steps. There are some basic use cases there. We're listing technologies. We started recently describing more in details some of the components, listing some of the interesting one from the CNCF landscape and so on. We will put all our webinars and all our event there. And we're also deployed recently a survey about a couple of surveys that are useful for us to see how better we can help you. So I'm sure that Ulrich in the upcoming presentation will talk about it. And that's it from my side. So again, if there are questions or comments, you can reach me even later on. You can see my email there or my phone number. And of course, we are here and you can contact me at any moment, now or later.
Thank you, Luca. That was quite extensive.
The industrial internet.
Oops, and that was just a little bit too fast. So that was a very great overview as well. Thank you very much for that. I hope it will also be sticky and well, people can definitely go back to some of the slides if they were too fast, and I'm sure that we can also make make some of the slides available afterwards. So and next to the whole recording, of course. I didn't see any questions popping up from the audience, so I don't expect there's just too many questions out there. But if people indeed do have questions, then they will be able to still send them over afterwards. We can be easily reached on these email addresses, which on the video recording you will be able to see, but due to the scanning of websites, we probably won't be publishing them on the website in any case. Okay, so I think on your agenda you had as the next thing is some specific ideas around potentially next steps, use cases, business cases, and then the next half an hour, what we'll plan to do is try to give you some insights on what some of those use cases actually might look like. So if the sharing works together with me, I'll be trying to do that shortly. So Luca, now question to you: can you see my slide deck?
Yes, I can.
Or you can see my whole screen or something?
I can see the entire screen, so either you put it full screen or...
No, that was not the plan. So let me see if I'm getting it right now.
The industrial internet is here.
And it's just going just a little bit too fast. See if we can fix that. Otherwise, That should work. Now you can see it. Huh?
Yep.
Yeah. Let me go back just one slide. So, okay, here we go in terms of some business cases. So what we've done is giving a sort of an indication on business cases towards digitization in manufacturing space. That's a topic which is pretty dear and near to our hearts, since we've been doing this for quite a number of years with LSEG due to our sub-activity under the brand name of TRIF. And today under the additional brand names of DigiHub and Digitalis. So what we've prepared in this next let's say 20 minutes more or less is some ideas in terms of how industrial companies are actually using digitization, but also using digitization through means of cloud. And in the next let's say months, we'll be assisting manufacturing companies in trying to take those different steps, break them down into different smaller steps, trying to work towards digitization and what that means, and how to then also develop specific business cases in relation to those. Because of course, business cases, we'll be talking about them in a second, but they are obviously also very much related to your own business. And like Luca also mentioned, we can generalize, of course, in the use of different cloud technologies, but in the end, it's supposed to be also depending on the specific situation.
The industrial internet is here. Brilliant machines are talking, listening, and responding. They're using big data and analytics to drive industrial efficiency and productivity. What makes it all work together? Predix. Predix is the software platform for building and managing industrial internet applications. Predix enables organizations across all industries to optimize assets and operations. Predix's highly secure and scalable architecture supports machine intelligence and big data analytics from the smallest machines to the biggest clouds. Here's a closer look at how Predix works. This train is not traveling alone. Machines are at work in the most unlikely places. Software machine apps run on them, making continuous adjustments. Sensors collect real-time environmental data and changing track and weather conditions to adjust rail adhesion. Just as your smartphone runs apps that do all kinds of useful things, Predix enables a standard way to develop apps that run on machines and make them brilliant. Applications built on Predix look at what is and what should be across a fleet-wide ecosystem. Problems are spotted, technicians alerted, parts are waiting for the train. Predictive maintenance is completed. Let's see how. Predix's big data analytic infrastructure aggregates a wealth of data from diverse sources. Predix's software orchestrates assets, data, and operations to enable advanced predictive maintenance. A replacement train has already received the locomotive data, and it's ready to complete the journey. Through the power of Predix, data from machine apps can now get exactly where it needs to go, from the locomotive and cars to on-premise servers in the rail yard to high-performance clouds. With Predix, developers can make current machines brilliant and enable big data analytics at the machine level, in the cloud, and in between. Always-on costs and risks are reduced, and machine longevity is increased. At a wind farm, a turbine is performing below optimal levels. Predix machine apps and advanced analytics compare data from the turbine's individual performance history and from the rest of the farm. Predix's distributed computing and analytics work where they are needed across the entire operation. The real-time onboard analytics at a turbine collects sensor data to optimize the pitch of its blades. At the farm level, Predix's real-time analytics evaluates the farm's operational performance. A wind farm operator can securely access farm-level operational insight at his desk. Process and asset algorithms help people make decisions regarding maintenance, parts, and logistics. People at each level have much of the information they need to make better decisions. At the same time, on the ground, an authorized technician can see individual turbine data on a Predix-enabled tablet. More than just wind powers this farm. GE created Predix to power a new generation of industrial internet solutions. For developers, Predix offers one architecture with the flexibility to bring together analytics and big data to make machines brilliant and efficient work. Predix-enabled solutions have the speed, scale, and security to translate the industrial internet into powerful insights and new business models. We invite you to consider the possibilities.
Okay, with some intervention of, in this case, let me pause this one for a second.
As sales manager, you help drive competitiveness, revenue, and growth.
The pausing doesn't always work, it seems. Anyways.
As sales manager, you help drive competitiveness, revenue, and growth.
Otherwise, it's not going to work.
You're called on to forecast, plan,
This is interesting. Anyways, it was kind of funny having quite different inputs altogether. I think what this presentation showed was actually quite a number of different things. It's one of the example cases that has been built actually by General Electric for nearly a decade ago to show what the possibilities are of using, let's say at the time, the vision of industrializing basically by using digital and by using internet technologies. And since then, of course, the world has changed quite enormously again. But many of the baseline technologies that GE was using at the time, which were very much by themselves developed, have now become widely available thanks to cloud native, to technologies which are basically being provided in the open. And what we are seeing today is that not only GE, but actually quite a number of companies, also here in Flanders, for instance, Televic in terms of the in-train telematics, or EBO when it comes to windmills, have been quite successful in implementing similar types of technologies in their own environments. So what it also shows is of course many different components. And actually, quite at the time, many of those different infrastructure elements were not available. But today they are becoming widely available. They are widely available. Just consider the use of 5G as a sort of broadband backend internet makes many of these things widely available. And there you can see quite a number of interesting business cases coming all together. There's of course the business case from GE themselves, basically as a technology provider, providing new types of technologies, but offering a number of them their services, their platform as a service. So it's not purely a piece of software that you have to install on premise, but it's basically a distributed platform that is being activated in this case by GE to its customers, and maybe also to the customers of their customers. For instance, the developers of the train sets, and then finally, of course, the train operators. So many of those are now capable of using the technology, the platform, the software, in a distributed manner that is actually being facilitated thanks to the cloud, and which before was maybe also feasible. But you need to have your own networks, your own capabilities in making sure that the connections were there to happen. What we've also seen is how many of those components, like the sensors, are able to basically exponentially increase. So from one train set where there's maybe one or two sensors, there's now one train set with maybe tens or hundreds or even thousands of sensors, which are collecting data all together, maybe collecting data and doing some pre-analysis on the train set while it's moving and driving, and then from there on as an embedded device, and therefore the concept also of using embedded capabilities and connecting those from the embedded device on the train into a centralized environment, which we then would foresee as somewhere in the cloud. And so then from a central management system, a central database capturing environment, there will be other types of interfaces from both the operator as well as maybe in this case for predictive maintenance, as in the use case was shown. It allows then for instance, again, a company which is basically the provider of some technologies to understand how maybe some components are being challenged thanks to the weather or due to the weather, or how they are being basically deteriorated because of the use of let's say the train station in movement. So then at least somebody can take action before something happens and before any further damage is done, or before maybe some sort of an accident might happen. So these are some of the use cases specifically related to, in this case, the GE case, where they provide, in this case, the cloud as a platform. Another case is also very much useful for digitization and for the concept of understanding the concept better of digitization. In the GE case, it's quite obvious. I mean, there's an operator, there's a user, which are basically industrializing and digitizing, in this case, the industrial process of the train or the windmills moving. But there's also other departments within a manufacturing environment that can be digitized thanks to the cloud. And let's take a look into an example of a SaaS application, so software as a service, whereby some of the people more on the administrative process are using capabilities which otherwise would be very difficultly available. I'm starting the video first, and then I'll do the sharing.
As sales manager, you help drive competitiveness, revenue, and growth. You're called on to forecast, plan, and budget while setting sales targets and leading your team to meet and exceed them. Accomplishing all this demands total visibility, instant communication, and real-time customer and sales information.
Oops. Yeah, that was not a yeah there. Here we go again.
As sales manager, you help drive competitiveness, revenue, and growth. You're called on to forecast, plan, and budget while setting sales targets and leading your team to meet and exceed them. Accomplishing all this demands total visibility, instant communication, and real-time customer and sales information. NetSuite CRM empowers you to transform your sales pipeline into higher revenues, bigger profits, and a more effective sales process. NetSuite CRM goes beyond traditional lead, billing, opportunity, and forecast management. Customer financials, NetSuite automates order history, the entire return to cash process, pricing. Information that's typically in your ERP and financial With an integrated solution, you get real-time visibility into orders, inventory, billing, shipments, customer financials, order history, returns, payments, pricing. Information that's typically in your ERP and financial systems, enabling a single view of all customer interactions. Powerful one-click sales order generation capability. From opportunity to quote, with automatic email to customer for approval. Eliminates duplicate manual data entry, and information flows seamlessly to finance for approval. With a fully integrated CRM solution, you and your team have access to relevant customer information, including orders, billing, and open support issues from anywhere at any time. This empowers you to provide accurate billing, expected ship date, and renewal terms, increasing customer satisfaction. For example, clicking on Check Item Availability shows you the expected ship date. Additionally, armed with past customer purchase history, current inventory levels, and service issues, you're ready to monetize existing customers with powerful cross-sell and upsell opportunities. NetSuite provides a 360-degree view of your customers that enables deep understanding across the entire customer lifecycle.
I think you're getting this because the video was playing Double and then it wasn't synced anymore, but I think that becomes pretty obvious. So yeah, this is basically one of the many different SaaS platforms that are available that can be used by any company, and that really helps in digitization as well for any manufacturing company. So it doesn't have to be the re-engineering of any industrial process by itself. A better way is maybe to start with some business lines, and then using some of the cloud capabilities provided by SaaS operators take those very first steps which are necessary. And they can actually also inspire the way that, in this case, cloud services could be used or could be seen within the company, because it's typically a process that a company has to go through, and it has to understand, of course, the many different aspects that are needed. So therefore, SaaS is always a good first step. And in this case, using CRM, using sales for automation and sales support for more the administrative processes. But the way that we've seen in many different cases when we digitized a number of manufacturing companies, many processes still being done on paper, where we have even spotted where paper trails are being generated through the digitization of some supply chain mechanisms. So where the suppliers were already digital, and where the manufacturing company need to put everything back on paper, you know, to have it internally processed. So sometimes the strangest things we have seen, and where we supported many of those companies in making the necessary next step. Next one is a case study for a specific machine, which is going to be connected to the cloud as well. The case study in this case is in German, but it's equally relevant and interesting, I guess, for you watching. So I'm going to try again, making sure that in this case everything is going to be visible.
Kommunikation so einfach wie nie. Jetzt mit Lettermaschine. Erstellen Sie mit Lettermaschine Ihre Kommunikation, gemeinsam im Team, mit anderen Unternehmen oder Dienstleistern. Als erstes legen Sie im Layout-Editor einfach und schnell das Corporate-Design konforme Layout an. Dann importieren Sie Ihre Kontaktdaten, völlig unabhängig von Struktur und Format, gerne auch direkt aus Ihrem CRM-System. Anschließend werden die importierten Kontaktdaten auf Richtigkeit sowie Dubletten geprüft und eine korrekte Anrede sichergestellt. Nun definieren Sie in Lettermaschine auf einfache Weise die Individualisierung, um so Ihre Kunden persönlich anzusprechen. Zum Schluss wird für jeden Empfänger das passende Format generiert. Print, E-Mail oder Landingpage, natürlich immer individuell und alles aus einem System. Individualisierte Kundenkommunikation, so einfach wie nie. Lettermaschine.
Yeah, and I mean, just many of those use cases exist today, of course, in quite different formats and ways. I'm just not getting rid of this this strange noise, so let's do it in a very different way. Here we go again. So I'm really not getting rid of this this awful sound. Hope it's going to work now. That's kind of fun. Nope. It seems to be that somewhere this this video is stuck in the middle of this presentation, and very difficult to get it out. So let's do it this way, and now you can at least see what is going to be on the slides here. So in terms of digitization, these are typically the ways that digitization have an impact on any type of company, and which are similarly related to the cloud ideas that Luca was also showing you before. So in terms of Cloud in Industry 4.0, what it brings specifically for digitization is, of course, no high investment costs for expensive IT infrastructure. Many of those concept cases in terms of digitization could be very risky, and therefore the investment cost in this case can be relatively reduced to some proof of concepts at least at the beginning. So the scalability in terms of pay as you grow, and basically also grow along together with the needs for the digital process is what we are looking into here. You can start using already existing solutions and learn from the expertise in that in those solutions, like we've seen in the both in the use case of Predix, but also from Netgear in this case. So there's many components already available, especially when it comes down to, for instance, things like CRM, which otherwise would cost you quite a lot of time to rethink many of these again. There's quite a variety of cloud applications available that you can use, both in terms of industrial components, industrial data. Just think about companies like Trendminer here in Belgium that have been supporting historical data, capturing, but also the analysis of it for many years, and supporting many companies in the process industry, in discrete manufacturing, on utilizing some of their historical data much more easy. So many of those platforms today are being offered into a cloud environment, just to be able, for instance, also to remove, let's say, the cost of installation, the tedious challenge of doing integrations. But you can actually even easily start a proof of concept and basically showcase what it can actually bring. In our case, for instance, we've been working together with some partners that can install, so we can install as well as a sort of a test before invest use case, some sensory systems which collect data, send it into our own private cloud, and then use analytics mechanisms in order to detect what potentially goes on into your manufacturing environment. So we've been digitizing this way quite a number of manufacturing companies, just looking into their day-to-day processes and helping them out in digitizing basically that process with many different components, sometimes 5-6 different steps, but within the time frame of about 6 months. And so we've been able to digitize quite a number of their use cases and the whole business in this case quite fast. Obviously using some cloud technologies and using the sensory data, sending it into the cloud, and then using analysis capabilities of the cloud itself. But giving at the same reflections that were also made by Luca before, considering data protection, of course, in some cases there are sensible, even confidential data that need to be taken into account and that need to be secured. So if we take as an example potential use case, and we are just using here in this case one of the manufacturing environment, let's take as an example Compositive Materials manufacturing company from out of Antwerp, which supplies to automotive and truck manufacturers in Germany and Belgium. The company itself is an SME, and they, for instance, don't want to operate their customer relations management system on their own premises because it's hard to get that to their salespeople which are on the road, or their business development teams which are on the road. And when they are on the road, they need, of course, also to be able to get immediate insights and feedback from what's happening inside of the manufacturing plant itself. So here, the use of a cloud environment is really very useful. And so then you could ask yourself, okay, what type of cloud computing should the Composite Materials company implement? This is a very basic type of use case you can ask yourself in many of the different processes you have running within your organization. And so simply ask yourself, okay, let's make a breakdown of these different activities happening in our organization, and where can cloud or digitization services be more helpful, or be more cost reductive, or just enable more facilities, like your nomadic salespeople or mobile salespeople can implement things onto their laptops on the way, or even on their mobile phone. So in this case, a SaaS environment would be probably a better solution, because there you can rely upon many of the different tool sets which are available, and basically use, for instance, sales forecasting and so forth on the central premise as well. So which steps are necessary for implementation of such a cloud type? Well, it's basically making sure that your teams are accustomed to using such a platform, that they are being trained in order to do so, that they can use, of course, the tool sets. So those are the very first, very basic steps to take into consideration. They are very exemplary for any other type of cloud environment or digitization concept that you might have. So what you can also think of is how your business itself would change due to digitalization, and then basically apply here as well, where there's different cloud mechanisms that could take place. We won't be dwelling into this right now, but when we would work together in terms of the digitalization challenges, we would use open cloud technologies as a means to this end, and to see where it can actually help you in the digitization of activities. Now, what does it mean, digitization or digitalization in this step? Is basically just transferring from analog to digital. It could also be a step-by-step process whereby from an industrial environment or from a traditional business environment, you take the necessary steps to move into the digital world. And I mean, we could use very much consumables in the same example. So how basically the book environment has transformed into ebook reading is a good example as well. And like in this case, you could see the same happening into an industrial space, and how basically, for instance, e-commerce is being basically the standard, of course, but understanding that many of the and even most of the e-commerce companies are operating out of the cloud. Same true for map providers. So this is basically how all of these industries have been transforming themselves into those environments. And so then you can consider, okay, how to do this digitization in the form of a manufacturing enterprise, and where it can actually bring some real advantages in terms of, for instance, cost savings or scalability. But even more so, remember what I used as an example just before in terms of the back to paperwork. And of course, what you have with paperwork is lots of errors. So reducing the amount of error propagation just by doing a simple entry check for everything that's being entered into an online system. So very basic things that you can imagine also in terms of where there is a usefulness for digitization and even using cloud technologies into such a manufacturing environment. This is where you will need some additional support, because yeah, there's a lot of ways, of course, that one can think of digitization and using clouds, but it doesn't always go that easy. And so really what you need to think of is how all of these different processes will need to be taken step by step down, and where you need some guidance, to do that. Where we can also help you with, in this case, is identifying which open cloud technologies can help, in this case, in doing those different necessary steps. So it can go from basically infrastructure layer up to the visual presentation layer, using things like Grafana, using things like OpenSQL or MySQL, or as database platforms in the means to collect data and to present those out there. But also in terms of some embedded technology. So this is really where we can step in and help you out in giving some additional ideas. It doesn't always have to be fully digital, of course. We are also considering, in many cases, hybrid business models. For instance, in the case of automotive, let's take just the example of in-car telematics, where we will be using existing traditional software, which is already available within a car, like CAN-bus types, but using, for instance, the in-car telematics to provide some new types of additional cloud-based services. Just consider a Tesla, which is using Netflix or even today's Disney Plus to stream that on site of the middle console when you're charging your car. So assess where you can see basically also where your competitors are working today. And many of your competitors might already have been embracing the digitalization environment. So this is where we can make a difference, because when they have been utilizing digitization in some of the traditional cloud environments, we could help you out selecting open cloud technologies, which might be much more cost effective than using the public cloud providers. So there's a couple of different steps that you can take as next steps, and that is definitely assess within your company what the cloud readiness is, what the digitalization readiness is. And we are providing through Digitalis as our digital innovation hub and Digitalis digital maturity assessment assessment capability, which will help you being guided, asking the right questions internally within your organization, and therefore resulting basically in an indicator on how it could actually improve, and that helps us also as providers in giving you the better advice than what you have currently available, and giving you also some ideas on where to take the next different necessary steps, which could be guidance, which could be training, or which could be use of some proof of concepts that we can set up. And also what's necessary, of course, is this vision that you have to build within your organization in order to get a real proper strategy in terms of digitization, and where definitely the cloud will be a strong component in there. So this is where we will be able to guide you with what's the vision in terms of transformation, how long will it need to take, what are the different partners that you need to build out, where are the different technology components that need to be set out. But it requires also some other elements, like this has to be taken up from the top, but has to be supported also with people on the production floor, and has to be supervised, of course, with some people that have experience in this domain. And those different steps are really what it is that we can help you with and guide you through. So as a final idea is basically where it's not only the manufacturing domain, but for instance, also cybersecurity as an example from an IT company or an IT space, where we are ourselves using, in this case, for instance, AWS platforms for the time being, with SageMaker as a piece of technology that AWS is providing, and where we have been basically collecting data from networks, from monitoring instances, and sending those into a detection platform, and then using AI capabilities being offered through the cloud that could actually help us out identifying where some of the potential threats could be coming from, using things like AutoML to detect automatically where some vulnerabilities might arise, or connecting it to the cloud in order to compare with existing public source data, and identifying whether we are under attack or whether we are seeing some incidents that might have been seen also with other companies globally. So these are a couple of use cases that we just wanted to share with you, and of course much more available. But taking it to the end here, there's many different components and technologies that also from OpenCloudification we will be able to offer you today and also towards the future, using open source cybersecurity components, using open source mechanisms that help you encrypting some data, using open source technologies in order to provide basically visualization software and so forth. That's really why we are here with OpenCloudification, and in this case also with Digitalis, of course, to support the manufacturing companies. So with this, we hope that we've provided you some first insights in using cloud technologies and OpenCloudification. Also thanks to Luca here in indicating some first steps, and also providing you with some use cases, business cases on how these actually could be deployed inside of your organization. So we are looking forward to seeing you again in our next webinar next month. We'll be deep diving some of these additional use cases, and also focusing slightly more on the use of microservices and how those could also from an open cloud perspective could actually support the developments within your organizations, and really fastly developing in high scale and availability. So with this, thank you very much for your interest and attention, and looking forward to seeing you in the next webinar. Bye now.